This healing process is helping us to forgive ourselves and others, and it's the process of reframing. Now, so why I've included this in like the healing part is because, sometimes we think forgiveness is about the other person, that forgiveness is like saying what they did was okay. Forgiveness is saying that you condone it. Well, if I forgive my boyfriend for doing this, that means we can stay together. And let's separate forgiveness from reconciliation. Reconciliation means that we can come together and we can work something out. Forgiveness is letting go of that trapped emotion in your body. So forgiveness is about you. Forgiveness is not about the other person. So we want to get really good at forgiving. But when it comes to forgiving, there's a spectrum, right? So some things are like kind of easy to forgive, and then there's other things that you're just like find it really, really hard to forgive people for. Like if your friend or your boyfriend says he's gonna call and he doesn't call, leaves you hanging or something, I mean, you probably can come around to forgiving them for that. But maybe you've been sexually assaulted. Maybe your husband cheated on you. Maybe your parents abandoned you or abused you, or anything like that, and you've tried to forgive them, but you can't because you're holding on to a story about what happened. So reframing allows us to just see things differently. One, it allows us to see the situation in a different light. Like, let me give you an example. So if your father yelled at you and was quite aggressive towards you, and when he wasn't yelling at you, he kind of just ignored you, you have come to the conclusion that he didn't love you, and so you don't want to forgive him. Like, he should have done better, and he should have done better. Reframing it and seeing it in a different perspective would then be willing to see it differently, in that maybe your dad wanted to do better. Maybe your dad was raised by an extremely abusive father who hurt him a lot. By the way, a lot of things that our parents have been through, they'll never tell us. Some do, some will never tell us the trauma that they experienced. Some of them, because we're going into a different generation, right? Like, our generation is different. Like, we are much more open to seeing therapists. We're much more open for coaching. We're much more open to like expressing our feelings, whereas like the older generation wasn't so much. So they suppress it even more, which is why they've inflicted all their unconsciousness on us, and it's our job to heal it, right? So we don't project it on the next generation. So your father may have experienced horrendous abuse, but he would never tell you. He would say that he had had okay relationship with my father, or whatever it is, right? Be willing to see it in a different light. Be willing to see it that maybe your dad wanted to do better, and we don't know what's going on in the psyche of someone else, right? You don't know what he was feeling on the inside. Maybe he recognized how crappy of a father he was to you, and he beat himself up. An unwounded person is someone who inflicts pain on someone else, right? So he may have wanted to do better, but his unhealed being, his wounds, prevented him from being the father that you deserved. when we can begin to see things that have happened to us from the perspective of the other person, and when we're willing to open our eyes and be empathetic and compassionate to the other person, to be willing to maybe even acknowledge that there's variables that we don't know, it becomes easier to forgive someone. For example, someone that like gives you the finger on the road because, I don't know, they didn't like what you did and you done nothing wrong. They might have been the one in the wrong, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like that person is such an asshole. They might have experienced something horrendous just before that incident happened. That's what reframing is about. It's about saying like, it's about acknowledging you don't have all the information. We don't have all the information. We don't know the lives of our parents that contributed to the way that they treated us, to contribute to the decisions that they made. For example, this is actually another personal, I feel like I'm just telling you all my business. Another personal share is that I don't know that I ever felt resentment for my mother for putting us up for adoption. I'm not sure. Like, trying to think if I like resented her. I don't think that I did. I think I was more of the mind of like, I must not be worthy, I'm not good enough, my mom didn't want me, that type of thing, than blaming her per se. But now that I've done the spiritual work, and now that I've done a lot of my own healing, and now that I understand, you know, generational trauma, and all of that, like, I understand that that didn't come from nowhere. She didn't just like evolve and then all of a sudden she was a shit mom, and all of a sudden, you know, she prioritized her relationship over her children, and all of a sudden, you know, she didn't know how to take care of her kids. This was systemic. This was systemic, meaning, like, I learned later my mom was adopted, so she had those same feelings of abandonment, right? So she had those same like feelings of unworthiness. I don't know what happened in my mom's life. Like, my mom might have been like raped all of her life. I don't know. I don't know who her parents were. And it wasn't until I'd done the work that I could really look and be like, whether I felt like I knew my mom's story or not, I will never know her story. I will never know her story. What I do know is this: she's wounded. She's wounded, and she doesn't have the fucking tools that I do, and the resources that I do, and the education that I do to lift myself up high enough to know and to give myself the power to not ever fucking do that to my daughter, to never be in that situation where she feels like she's not the priority in my life. Like, I would choose a man over her. Like, I would ever let her be abused and me sit there in that. Does that make sense? But for me to judge her is for me to say that she's had all the resources that I've had. This is the power of reframing. It's allowing us to step back and just be compassionate, and just to understand that we don't know what the other person is going through, and to recognize that wounded people wound people. No one whole is gonna hurt you. And that doesn't take away the horrible thing they did to you. That doesn't make the fact that she, you know, witnessed our father abusing us, that doesn't make it okay. It doesn't mean that my trauma is invalidated. It doesn't mean that she did a good job. But what it does mean is that I don't need to be resentful of her. I don't need to judge her. I can love her. I can appreciate her. I can see her in her pain, and I can see her as a wounded child. I don't know the context of her adoption. I'm guessing it was a lot more traumatic than mine. I don't know how she was feeling and what was going through her mind and what she had been through when she put us in that situation. So I choose to love her, and I choose to see things differently, and I choose to forgive her, because I know now that that lack of forgiveness is actually impacting me, and it's an unhealed part within us when we don't forgive the other. So in your worksheets, I have a series of questions of how you can try to see the perspective of the person that hurt you in a different light. And can you demonstrate compassion to someone who has caused you so much pain? And therein lies your power. Forgiveness truly gives you power because it sets you free. When we hold on to resentment, do you think that's impacting the other person? Unless you tell them daily, probably not. Is it impacting you? Fuck yes. On every level of your emotional, your psychological, your spiritual well-being is being impacted anytime we don't forgive. Now look, I wanna also make a point that this is surface stuff I'm giving you. Like, this is surface forgiveness, okay? Like, this is surface healing work. If you want to delve deeper into it, let's do it. Let's set up a call. We can do deeper work. But I always want to give you guys tools that you could actually use on yourself, because that's the beauty of this relationship, is that, like, I don't want you to be dependent on me or anyone else. Don't give your power to me or anybody else, because nobody can do something for you that you can't do for yourself. They can guide you, they can hold your hand, they can encourage you. But at the end of the day, once you have these skills, to heal yourself, you know, it's incredibly empowering, and you don't need anybody else to do it for you. You can go and delve and do the deep work on your own. But in the beginning, you definitely need some kind of guidance. So if you feel like you need to do some more healing work on a deeper level, you feel like you've got some suppressed shit in there, or you need to do some healing work in terms of forgiveness, we can do some deep forgiveness processes so you can clear that out of your emotional body, right? It's the thing with the law of attraction. We think that, yes, if I think and I want these things and all of that, like, I can attract the life of my dreams. And we know that that's not true. You need to clear your energy. We are energetic beings, so you need to be in vibrational alignment with what it is you desire. If you haven't cleared that shit, then you can't be in vibrational alignment with it. You just can't. If you don't clear those blockages around money, if you don't clear those blockages around your worthiness and your, like, lovableness, you will not attract what you want, no matter how many vision boards, etc., that you do, because you're not in vibrational alignment. You need to clear that energy, and we can definitely do some deep work around that.